My name is Emily Carter, and I never imagined I would share this story. For a long time, I kept it to myself, unsure of how the world would react. The weight of what I experienced was overwhelming, and eventually, I realized that staying silent was no longer an option. This is not about seeking fame or recognition. This is about truth, an undeniable reality that changed my life forever. It happened on what seemed like an ordinary day in October 2023. My routine was predictable, comforting even. I woke up, made my morning coffee, kissed my husband goodbye, and went to work as a night shift nurse at St. Luke's Hospital. My job was demanding, but deeply fulfilling. That night, like so many others before, I completed my rounds, checked on my patients, and administered medications. There was nothing unusual, no warning signs, no premonition of what was about to happen. As my shift ended, exhaustion took over. I longed for the warmth of my bed, the embrace of my husband, the simple peace of home. I got into my car, turned on the radio, and began my usual drive home. The rain had started falling lightly, and the streets were mostly empty. Everything seemed normal, until it wasn't. 5 minutes from home, I saw headlights. They were erratic, blinding, and coming straight toward me. My heart pounded as I realized the vehicle was out of control. I slammed on my brakes, but it was too late. The impact was brutal. Metal twisted, glass shattered, and in an instant I was thrown forward. Then, silence. No pain, no fear, just an eerie stillness. I expected panic, but instead, there was peace. I looked down and saw my own body trapped in the wreckage. But I wasn't in it. I was above it, watching from a distance yet fully aware. It was then that I understood. I was dead. But death was not the end. In that moment, something extraordinary began. A light appeared in the distance, not like any light I had ever seen. It wasn't coming from one place. It was everywhere, surrounding me, filling me with warmth and an indescribable sense of love. It pulled me toward it, and I didn't resist. The world below faded, and I surrendered to whatever was waiting beyond. I had no expectations, no idea what I would find, but what I encountered on the other side was more real than anything I had ever known. It was in that place, beyond the physical world, that I met Jesus, and what he revealed to me changed everything. The moment I surrendered to the light, I felt a shift unlike anything I had ever known. It wasn't like falling asleep or drifting into unconsciousness. It was as if I had stepped through an invisible doorway, leaving behind everything I had ever known. The weight of the world, the worries, the fears, the doubts, vanished. I was no longer bound by the limitations of my physical body. Instead, I felt limitless, as if I had existed like this forever but had somehow forgotten until now. The air, if I could call it that, hummed with an energy so profound, it felt as though every particle around me was alive, vibrating with a purpose I couldn't yet comprehend. Then, I became aware of something even more astonishing. I was not alone. A presence surrounded me, powerful yet gentle, overwhelming yet comforting. It was both vast and intimately close, like an embrace without arms, a voice without words, a knowing beyond thought. My heart, or whatever part of me still existed in this place, recognized it instantly. This presence had always been with me, though I had never truly understood it before. And then, I heard the voice. It spoke not with sound, but with an unshakable authority that resonated deep within my being. Emily, do not be afraid. The words sent a ripple through me, dispelling every last remnant of uncertainty. I turned, and there he was. I had spent my entire life believing in him, praying to him, but never in my wildest dreams did I expect to stand before him. Jesus. His presence was unlike anything I had ever encountered, more than light, more than warmth. It was love in its purest, most undeniable form. Looking into his eyes, I saw eternity, and in that instant, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. Everything I had ever sought, everything I had ever longed for, was standing right in front of me. He reached out his hand, and the moment his fingers brushed mine, something indescribable happened. A surge of energy, more powerful than anything I had ever felt, coursed through me. It wasn't just warmth. It was life itself. Every doubt, every fear, every shadow that had ever clung to me was stripped away in an instant. I felt whole in a way I never had before, as if I had finally returned to where I was always meant to be. Tears streamed down my face, not from sadness, but from a joy so overwhelming it consumed me entirely. Jesus smiled, and his voice, though calm, carried a weight, a purpose. "You are here because you must see," he said. "There is a truth that has been hidden for generations, and it is time for it to be revealed." I wanted to ask what he meant, but before I could, the world around me began to change. The light that had embraced me gave way to something new. At first, I couldn't quite make sense of it, but then, as the details sharpened, I realized what I was looking at. It was a city, unlike anything I had ever seen. Towering structures of gold and ivory rose before me, gleaming with a radiance that seemed to come from within. The streets pulsed with an energy that was not just movement, but life itself. And the people, they walked with purpose, heads held high, their very presence exuding wisdom, strength, and something even deeper. I turned to Jesus, my heart pounding. "Where are we?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. His expression remained calm, but there was an intensity in his eyes. "This," he said, "is what was lost." The words lingered in my mind as I took in the sight before me. A city of impossible beauty stretched beyond the horizon, unlike anything I had ever imagined. The structures, bathed in a golden light, seemed to breathe, as if they were alive with an energy beyond comprehension. Everything shimmered, not with artificial illumination, but with a radiance that came from within. The very air hummed with wisdom, with purpose, with something I couldn't yet name but could feel deep within my soul. And the people, they moved with grace, not burdened by the weight of the world as we knew it, but standing tall, dignified, powerful. Their presence exuded something ancient yet familiar, something that resonated deep within me, as if I had known them once but had somehow forgotten. I turned to Jesus, my heart swelling with awe and confusion. "What is this place?" I asked, barely able to find my voice. His gaze was steady, filled with something I could only describe as sorrow and reverence entwined. "This is what was lost," he said, his voice carrying a weight that pressed upon me like an unshakable truth. "A history that was erased, a people who were deceived, a kingdom that was stolen." His words struck something deep within me, something raw and unformed, a knowing I could not yet grasp, but could feel reverberating in my spirit. I looked back at the city, taking in every detail. The streets, unlike any I had ever walked, were paved with something more precious than gold. It was as if they carried the very essence of knowledge and power within them. The people were clothed in garments woven with symbols, intricate and mesmerizing, as if they spoke a language beyond words. But it wasn't just their clothing, their posture, or their presence that left me breathless. It was the authority they carried, an authority that seemed to flow from them naturally, as if they had never known anything less. "They were never meant to be broken," Jesus continued, his voice steady yet filled with an unmistakable sadness. "They were never meant to be ruled over, never meant to be stripped of their identity. But fear of their strength, of their wisdom, of their divine connection, led to their downfall. The world rewrote their story, and in doing so, convinced them that they were less than what they truly were." A lump formed in my throat as his words settled over me. It didn't feel like a distant history, like something detached from the present. It felt immediate, personal, urgent, a truth that had always been there, buried beneath layers of deception. My chest tightened as realization crept in. If this was lost, I hesitated, afraid to finish the thought, afraid of what it meant. Then where are they now? Jesus' expression didn't change, but something in his presence shifted. There was an unspoken answer in his silence, one that sent a chill through me before he even spoke the words. "You already know," he said softly. "Look." Before I could ask what he meant, the vision shifted. The radiant city began to fade, dissolving like mist, and in its place, something else took form. The streets once filled with wisdom and light darkened. The golden structures crumbled, and where there had once been dignity and strength, there was now suffering. The same people who had once carried themselves like kings and scholars were now bound in chains, their eyes hollow with loss. The hum of knowledge was replaced with cries of anguish, with the weight of oppression. My breath caught in my throat as I watched the transformation unfold before me, an undeniable truth revealing itself in ways I could no longer ignore. I wanted to look away, to deny what I was seeing, but Jesus' voice anchored me in place. "This is what they took," he said, his tone heavy with sorrow and resolve. "Not just land, not just wealth. They stole their story, their very identity. And in its place they built a lie so vast, so insidious, that even those who were taken began to believe it." Tears blurred my vision as I took in the faces before me, faces etched with pain, with loss, with a history rewritten by those who feared their truth. They were not broken by choice. They had been shattered, systematically, deliberately. The weight of it crushed me, pressing against my soul with a force I had never felt before. It was too much to bear. I turned back to Jesus, desperation clawing at my voice. "Why?" I asked, the word barely escaping my lips. Why was this allowed to happen? His eyes met mine, filled with both a sadness I couldn't comprehend and a fire that burned beyond time itself. "Because when they remember," he said, "when they awaken to who they truly are, the world as it stands will not survive. And the enemy has always known that." The words hit me like a tidal wave, drowning me in their implications. My pulse pounded in my ears as the vision shifted once again. The chains once so heavy began to break, the voices once silenced began to rise, and before me I saw something else, something more powerful than anything I had witnessed yet. A stirring, a reckoning, a return. The weight of it all settled deep within me, a truth too immense to ignore. I turned to Jesus once more, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. "What happens now?" He held my gaze, and for the first time since this vision began, I saw something new in his eyes. Not sorrow, not warning, but victory. "They wake up," he said. The vision before me pulsed with an intensity I could feel in my very soul. The chains that had once bound them were shattering, falling away like dust in the wind. The voices that had been silenced for generations now rose in unison, not in whispers, but in a declaration so powerful it made the ground tremble beneath me. It was not a cry of pain. It was not a plea for mercy. It was something far greater. It was the sound of a people remembering who they were. I watched as the light within them reignited, spreading like fire, consuming the remnants of deception that had held them captive for so long. Their backs, once bent under the weight of falsehoods, straightened with an authority that could not be denied. Their eyes, once filled with uncertainty, now burned with the clarity of truth. They were not just reclaiming their freedom, they were reclaiming their birthright. Yet even as this awakening took hold, something else stirred in the distance. A darkness, subtle at first, but growing with every passing moment. It moved like a shadow, weaving itself through the world unnoticed by those too distracted to see. It did not come with chains or whips. It did not rely on brute force. It was far more insidious than that. I turned to Jesus, feeling the weight of an unspoken warning settle upon me. "They are waking up," I said, my voice steady but filled with an unease I could not shake. "But I can feel it. Something is trying to stop them." His expression remained firm, unwavering. "The enemy does not need to enslave them again," he said. "He only needs to convince them that they were never enslaved at all." The word sent a chill through me. I looked back at the vision, and suddenly I saw it. A different kind of deception. No longer did it come in the form of chains and oppression. Now it came wrapped in illusion, in comfort, in distraction. The chains had become invisible, and that made them far more dangerous. I saw people lulled into complacency, fed narratives designed to keep them passive. I saw voices rising against the awakening, not from the oppressors, but from within the very people who were waking up. Some rejected the truth outright, too afraid to acknowledge that everything they had believed was a lie. Others fought to maintain the illusion, unwilling to let go of the false history they had been given. Jesus' voice was steady but urgent. "The battle is no longer fought in the open," he said. "It is fought in the mind, in the heart. The greatest weapon of the enemy is not force. It is deception." I felt my breath catch as the full weight of his words sank in. The enemy no longer needed to enslave the body. He only needed to control the perception of reality. If they never realized they had been deceived, they would never fight to reclaim what was theirs. If they never recognized the chains, they would never break them. A fire lit within me, something deeper than anger, deeper than outrage. A resolve, a knowing. I turned to Jesus, my voice no longer uncertain. Then how do they win? His eyes locked onto mine, and for the first time, I felt the full force of his command. By seeking the truth, by rejecting the illusion no matter the cost, by refusing to be swayed by comfort, by lies, by fear. When they remember who they are, when they refuse to be deceived, nothing will be able to stop them. The vision shifted again, and I was no longer watching from the outside. I was within it, walking among those who were awakening. I could feel the weight of their struggles, the battle raging inside them. Some embraced the truth with open arms, stepping into the power that had always been theirs. Others hesitated, torn between the safety of the illusion and the terrifying reality of the unknown. The enemy fought desperately to keep them asleep, whispering lies disguised as wisdom, convincing them that they were powerless, that the battle was futile. But I saw something else, a remnant who would not yield, a remnant who had seen through the deception and refused to be controlled. They were few, but they were fierce, and their presence alone was enough to send ripples through the world around them. Jesus' voice echoed within me. It does not take the masses to change the course of history. It only takes those who refuse to bow to the lie. The realization struck me like lightning. This was not just about reclaiming history. This was not just about exposing deception. This was about a war for the very soul of a people. And those who stood firm in truth would not just be fighting for themselves, they would be fighting for all who had yet to awaken. I felt the urgency pressing against me like a force I could not ignore. There was no time for hesitation, no room for doubt. The battle had already begun, and every moment spent in ignorance was a moment lost. The world would not hand them their freedom, they would have to take it. I turned to Jesus, a fire burning in my chest. What must be done? His answer was both simple and absolute. They must choose. And with that, the vision shifted once more, revealing what lay ahead. The cost, the sacrifice, the battle that would test the very core of who they were. But in that moment, I knew one thing for certain. The time of awakening had come. The world around me trembled as the vision expanded, revealing the road ahead. The awakening had begun, but it was not without resistance. For every person who embraced the truth, there were forces working tirelessly to suppress it. The battle was not fought in fields or with weapons of war. It was fought in the mind, in the heart, in the unseen spaces where reality itself was shaped. I saw systems designed to keep them blind, entertainment that numbed the senses, ideologies that distorted their identity, leaders who spoke in half-truths, ensuring that even those who sought knowledge would be met with confusion. The enemy's greatest trick was not oppression, it was distraction. If they could be kept occupied, chasing illusions, arguing over trivialities, they would never turn their eyes toward the truth. Jesus stood beside me, his gaze steady. "This is the battlefield now," he said. "The greatest war is not waged with swords, but with deception. And many will fall not because they lack strength, but because they never saw the battle at all." The weight of his words pressed upon me. I saw people torn between what they had always believed and the undeniable reality before them. Some clung to the past, unwilling to admit that everything they had been taught was a lie. Others saw the truth but feared what it would cost them to embrace it. Only a few stood firm, refusing to be manipulated, refusing to be lulled back into complacency. I turned to Jesus, my voice filled with urgency. If they do not see the battle, how can they fight? He met my gaze, his expression unwavering. They must learn to recognize the lie. They must see the illusion for what it is. The moment they stop accepting the false reality given to them, the chains will break. The vision shifted, and I saw the cost of such clarity. Those who refused the deception were not welcomed as heroes. They were mocked, ridiculed, ostracized. Some lost their positions, their reputations, their very livelihoods. The world did not celebrate those who broke free. It punished them. And yet, I saw something else. Though they suffered, they stood unshaken. Though they were rejected, they grew stronger. The more the enemy fought to silence them, the louder their truth became. Jesus' voice rang through my soul. They will be tested, but those who endure will be unbreakable. The vision darkened, and I felt a weight settle in the air around me. The awakening had begun, but the enemy was not idle. The illusion once unchallenged was now exposed, and those who had profited from the deception would not surrender easily. I saw their next move, a strategy more dangerous than oppression, more insidious than lies. They would not fight openly. Instead, they would manipulate from within. I saw leaders rise, speaking the language of truth but twisting it to serve their own ends. They would claim to guide the awakening while leading people back into a different kind of bondage. Their words would be carefully crafted, blending just enough truth to appear genuine while poisoning the minds of those who followed them. I turned to Jesus, anger rising within me. They are deceiving even those who seek the truth. His expression did not waver. That has always been the enemy's way. If he cannot keep them blind, he will mislead them. The greatest danger is not chains. It is a lie that looks like freedom. I watched as people followed these false leaders, believing they had broken free, when in reality, they had simply exchanged one illusion for another. They no longer fought the enemy because they no longer saw him. They believed they had won, while the real battle raged on in the shadows. But then, I saw something else. A remnant who saw through the deception. They were not swayed by eloquent words or grand promises. They did not seek comfort or validation. They sought only the truth, no matter how difficult, no matter how painful. And because of this, they could not be controlled. I turned to Jesus, my heart pounding. How can they tell the difference? His answer was simple but carried the weight of eternity. By knowing me. The truth is not a concept. It is not an idea. It is a person. Those who seek me will not be led astray. The power of his words resonated within me. This was the key. The enemy could twist facts, distort history, manipulate emotions, but he could not change the nature of truth itself. Those who sought Jesus with all their hearts would never be deceived, because truth was not something they would merely learn. It was someone they would know. The vision shifted again, revealing what would come next. The war was far from over, and the enemy would not give up without a final, desperate attempt to maintain control. But the remnant, those who had seen through every deception, were ready. The battle would be fierce, but for the first time, I felt something new, a certainty that no matter how dark things became, the light would not be extinguished. I felt the air tighten as the vision pulled me deeper. The battle had escalated, and now, the enemy's final strategy was revealed. If deception could no longer keep them asleep, if manipulation could no longer guide them, then there was only one thing left to do. I saw it unfold before me. Laws passed in the name of progress, movements formed under the guise of justice, ideologies crafted to look righteous, but carrying a hidden cost. At first they seemed harmless, even beneficial, but beneath the surface, they served only one purpose: to silence those who refused to conform. I saw voices speaking truth, only to be stripped of their platforms. I saw entire systems redesigned to favor those who obeyed while punishing those who questioned. Not with physical chains, but with consequences just as severe. Jobs lost, families divided, communities turned against one another. The war had shifted from deception to coercion. I turned to Jesus, my voice steady but filled with concern. They will make it impossible to speak. He nodded. That is the plan. But truth does not need permission to be spoken. It cannot be erased. I watched as the remnant, though persecuted, refused to be silent. They found new ways to share what they knew. They gathered in homes, in secret places, in whispers that carried further than the loudest voices of deception. They adapted, they endured, and the more the world tried to suppress them, the more their message spread. But then, I saw something even more powerful. The enemy had counted on their silence, but he had not counted on their faith. Where words could no longer be spoken, actions spoke louder. They became living testimonies, walking proof of the truth they carried. Their very existence defied the lie. Jesus' voice carried through the storm. When the world can no longer deny them, it will have no choice but to listen. The vision faded, but its impact remained, burning in my soul like a fire that could not be quenched. The final battle was not about convincing the world. It was about standing firm, about being unshakable. The truth was no longer just something to be told. It was something to be lived, and those who lived it would change everything. The vision expanded once more, pulling me deeper into the unfolding battle. The war was no longer just about deception or coercion. It was about endurance. The enemy had played every trick, set every trap, and still, The remnant stood. But now came the true test, the one designed to break even the strongest. It was not a battle of intellect or willpower. It was a battle of the soul. I saw it clearly, weariness creeping into the hearts of those who had fought so long. They had withstood the lies, resisted the manipulation, endured the rejection, but now, the weight of it all threatened to consume them. The enemy whispered not with force, but with exhaustion. "Is it worth it?" he murmured. "You stand alone. No one is listening. No one is coming." I felt their struggle, their silent question hanging in the air. They had not wavered because of deception, nor because of threats. But this was something different. The loneliness, the sense of isolation, the slow erosion of strength. The battle had turned inward. It was no longer about the enemy convincing them of a lie. It was about convincing them to give up. Jesus stood beside me, his presence unwavering. "This is the final test," he said, "not of knowledge, not of courage, but of faith." I saw some falter, their spirits heavy. They had fought with everything in them, but the silence was deafening. The cost had been high, and the reward felt distant. Some began to turn away, not because they had been deceived, but because they had grown tired. But then, I saw something else. A few, though weary, refused to surrender. They did not argue. They did not demand signs. They simply stood, their feet planted, their resolve unshaken, even in the midst of exhaustion. They did not see the victory yet, but they knew it was coming. Jesus' voice echoed through the silence. "Those who endure to the end will see what was promised." The vision shifted, and I saw the world trembling under the weight of something unseen. The battle had raged on for what felt like eternity. But now, something was different. The ground beneath me pulsed, the very air vibrating with an energy I could not describe. The deception had reached its peak, the oppression had reached its limit, and the endurance of the remnant had held firm. Then, it happened. The first crack in the illusion. It was small at first, barely noticeable, but once it appeared it could not be undone. The lie that had held the world captive for generations had begun to fracture, and as it did, the reaction was immediate. Some clung to it desperately, refusing to let go even as the truth became undeniable. Others stood frozen, their entire reality crumbling around them. But there were some, those who had always felt something was wrong but could never name it, who suddenly saw. The light broke through, not in a single moment, but in waves. Truth spread, not by force, not by argument, but by its very nature. And once people saw it, they could never unsee it. Jesus turned to me, his voice calm but filled with the weight of eternity. "This is what they feared. Not rebellion, not war, but revelation. Once the truth is known, the lie holds no power." I felt the weight of it, the magnitude of what was happening. The awakening had been slow, painful, costly, but now it was unstoppable. The final deception had been exposed, and no amount of force, distraction, or manipulation could restore it. The world had changed, and it would never be the same again. I watched as the cracks in the illusion spread, tearing through the very fabric of the false reality that had held so many captive. The enemy, once confident in his control, now moved in desperation. He could no longer rely on deception alone, for the truth had begun to shine too brightly. He could no longer manipulate from the shadows, for the light had reached too many places. And so he turned to his final weapon, fear. The world shook as a storm gathered on the horizon. Systems that had once seemed unshakable began to collapse. Leaders who had once spoken with authority now scrambled to maintain their influence. The enemy whispered his final warning. "Without me, there will be nothing but chaos." I saw the fear spread like wildfire. Some hesitated, uncertain whether to embrace the truth or retreat into the familiar chains. Others panicked, believing that freedom would come at too high a cost. The illusion had been destroyed, but fear threatened to take its place. But then, I saw them, the remnant, those who had endured, who had refused to bow, who had held on to the truth even when it cost them everything. They did not tremble. They did not waver. They stood firm, their presence alone a testimony to the lie's defeat. Jesus' voice rang through the storm. "This is the final moment. The choice has been made, and now, the new begins." The storm did not last. The illusion had crumbled, The deception had been revealed, and the fear that had once ruled the world had lost its grip. What remained was something new, something that had not been seen for generations. I looked around and saw a world reborn, not perfect, not without struggle, but free. The chains of falsehood had been shattered. The battle had been won not by force but by truth. And those who had held firm through it all now stood at the threshold of something greater than they had ever imagined. I turned to Jesus, my heart full, my voice steady. "What now?" His answer was simple. "Now, they build." The world stood in a quiet stillness, as if holding its breath after the storm. The illusion had shattered. The deception lay in ruins, and those who had endured now stood in the light of truth. But there was no celebration, no immediate relief. The war had been won, but the wounds it left behind still remained. Now came the hardest part, rebuilding. I saw the people who had awakened standing among the remnants of the old world. Some were in awe, finally free from the lie they had lived under for so long. Others were overwhelmed, unsure of how to move forward without the structures they had once relied on. Even if those structures had been built on deception, freedom had come at a cost, and now they faced the weight of responsibility that came with it. Jesus stood beside me, watching in silence. I turned to him, my voice quiet but certain. "They have won, but they do not know what to do next." He nodded, his gaze steady. "That is always the way. To be freed from slavery is one thing. To learn how to live as free people is another." I looked at the faces before me, and I saw it. The hesitation, the fear, the uncertainty. The chains had been broken, but some still clung to them, not because they wanted to return to bondage, but because they did not know how to move forward without them. The lie had controlled them for so long that many had forgotten how to build anything outside of it. Jesus spoke again, his voice filled with both compassion and strength. "They must remember what was lost. Only then can they rebuild what was stolen." The vision shifted, and I saw the past come to life once more. The great civilization that had once stood, the one erased from history, now appeared before me again. I saw its people, their wisdom, their strength, their knowledge of things the world had long forgotten. They had built, not from fear or greed, but from truth, from unity, from an understanding of who they truly were. And then I saw the moment of their fall. The invasion was not of armies, but of deception. The conquerors did not come with weapons alone. They came with a lie, and that lie was enough to bring down an entire world. I turned to Jesus, my chest heavy with grief. How do they rebuild when all that was stolen has been erased? His eyes met mine, filled with something deeper than sorrow, an unshakable certainty. Not all was erased. Some things were hidden, and now it is time for them to be found. The scene shifted again, and I saw the remnant, those who had endured through the deception now searching. They were not looking to recreate what was lost. They were seeking to uncover what had been buried. They dug through history, through forgotten texts, through whispers of truth that had survived in hidden places. And piece by piece, the knowledge returned. The foundations were being laid once more. The rebuilding had begun. I watched as the people, now awake, worked to reclaim what had been stolen. They no longer sought permission to exist, nor did they ask for validation from the world that had once enslaved them. They had remembered who they were, and in doing so, they had become unstoppable. But the enemy had not disappeared. He could no longer deceive them as he once had, but he had one final weapon: division. If he could not control them, he would try to turn them against each other. I saw how he moved, whispering doubts, stirring old wounds, reminding them of past betrayals. He no longer needed to oppress them. He only needed them to distrust one another. If they were divided, they would destroy themselves before they could ever rebuild. I turned to Jesus, my heart pounding. How do they stop this? His voice was calm but firm. They must remember the truth that set them free. They were never meant to fight each other. The war was never between them. I saw those who understood standing against the division. They did not fight with anger or with force. They fought with truth, with unity, with a refusal to be turned against their own. And slowly, the enemy's final weapon began to lose its power. The war was over. The rebuilding had begun. And now, the greatest test of all lay before them: whether they would truly step into the future that had been stolen from them so long ago. I saw the first cities rise, not the ones built from greed, nor from oppression, nor from the corrupted structures of the old world. These were different. They were built on knowledge, on wisdom, on truth. The people no longer looked to the false systems for guidance. They looked to what had been hidden, to the records left behind by those who had come before them. They learned once more how to govern themselves, how to build without chains, how to lead without tyranny. The principles of their ancestors, once erased from history, now formed the foundation of something new. Jesus watched with me, his expression filled with both expectation and certainty. "This is what the enemy feared most," he said. "Not just that they would awaken, but that they would rise again." And rise they did. The world they built was not perfect, nor was it without struggle, but it was no longer ruled by deception. The chains, both visible and invisible, had been broken. The people had stepped into their rightful place, and no force on earth could ever make them forget who they were again. The battle had ended. The future had begun, and for the first time in generations, they were truly free. The final moments of the vision stretched before me, and I saw the world as it was meant to be. Not in ruins, not in oppression, but in balance. The deception had been shattered, the chains had been broken, and those who had once been bound now walked in their full power. Jesus turned to me, his gaze unwavering. "Now do you see?" I nodded, my heart full, my spirit unshaken. "Yes." He spoke once more, his voice carrying through the air, through time, through eternity. "Then go and tell them, the time has come." I stood in the silence, letting the weight of everything I had seen settle deep within me. This was more than a revelation. It was a calling, a truth so powerful that it could not remain hidden any longer. The deception had held for generations, but its time was over. The awakening had begun, and nothing could stop it now. I turned to Jesus one last time, my heart steady, my spirit unwavering. "What must I do?" His answer was both simple and absolute. "Speak. Tell them what you have seen. Tell them who they are." The vision faded, but its fire remained within me, burning with a certainty that could never be extinguished. I knew now that this was not just my story. It was the story of all who had been deceived, all who had been bound by a false reality, all who were finally beginning to see the truth. And now, it was time for them to hear it. To those who have felt the stirrings of something greater within you, to those who have sensed that the world is not as it seems, to those who have been searching for an answer, this is your moment. The illusion is breaking. The truth is calling you home. Will you answer? Do not let fear hold you back. Do not allow the world's distractions to steal this moment from you. The time for silence is over. The time for truth is now. Seek, question, learn. Do not settle for the version of reality that has been handed to you. Break free. Step into who you were always meant to be. And most importantly, follow him. Not just in word, not just in thought, but with your entire being. The enemy does not fear knowledge. He fears those who walk in truth. And that journey begins with Jesus. If this message has reached you, do not keep it to yourself. Share it. Speak it. Live it. The more who awaken, the faster the chains will fall. And if you are ready to take the next step, if you are ready to walk this path with eyes wide open, make sure you stay connected. Subscribe to this channel. Stay with us as we uncover more, as we walk this journey together. This is not just about learning, it is about transformation. And if you are here, it is because you were meant to be part of it. You are not alone. You were never alone. And now, you will never have to walk this path alone again. Until next time, stay strong, stay awake, and above all, stay in truth. I will see